As we continue nudging ourselves closer and closer towards the prospects of World War III, US politicians can't seem to keep themselves from just casually throwing out some absolutely wild suggestions in terms of how we should be handling the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. So I got a clip here for you guys from none other than this little weasel here, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, who basically decided to kind of casually throw out the idea that Putin needs to be taken out by one of his fellow oligarchs in Russia. So let's just go ahead and hear what he had to say here.
Is this in? Somebody in Russia has to step up to the plate. Is there Brutus in Russia? Is there a more successful Colonel Stauffenberg in the Russian military? The only way this ends, my friend, is for somebody in Russia to take this guy out. You would be doing your country a great service and the world a great service. How does
Right. So again, I don't know if you guys read this chyron down here at the bottom, but it says Russians shell Ukrainian nuclear power plants. So this is something that happened last night. Extremely terrifying moment, but thankfully firefighters were able to get into this complex, put out the fire, and it doesn't seem like there's any massive risk. But nonetheless, okay, the prospects that Russians were shelling a nuclear power plant should kind of give you the idea that maybe this isn't the right time to be casually floating out the idea of assassinating Vladimir Putin, the guy who's extremely paranoid right now, has a demonstrated lack of ability to act in a coherent way right now with his actions in Ukraine. I mean, this is not the time, guy. I mean, theoretically and conceptually, do I agree that I would love to see a guy like Vladimir Putin, somebody who is a violent, imperialist autocrat, essentially? Would I love to see him removed from power and replaced by somebody who was an actual leftist or something like that? Yes, of course, I would support that. But this is not the fucking time, my guy. You don't just casually throw that out there as an official representative of the US government, okay? You can't be saying that type of shit. Just absolutely wild, and only going to make it so that we are more likely to continue this downward spiral of escalation and bring us that much closer to the prospects of an actual confrontation between the NATO allies, including the United States and Russia. So again, just absolutely deranged shit to just be casually floating out there. Now, he got pushback on this basically almost immediately, and not just from like liberals or leftists, but he got pushback from basically everybody, okay? So here was one response from Ilhan Omar. She says, seriously, what the fuck? And I mean, yeah, what the fuck? She says, I really wish our members of Congress would cool it and regulate their remarks as the administration works to avoid World War III. And, I haven't agreed with everything that Biden has been doing so far. I still have to make a video on the latest round of sanctions and how I think that he goes way too far in punishing innocent Russian civilians who don't even support this war in the first place. So there are definitely critiques to level at Biden, but he has been doing a relatively good job at, preventing the escalation towards World War III. He's been very vehement about no U.S. troops being put on the ground or in the air in Ukraine. He's been very vehement about NATO allies staying out of the conflict. So he's been doing a relatively good job at avoiding the prospects of World War III. But she continues saying, as the world pays attention to how the U.S. and its leaders are responding, Lindsey's remarks and remarks made by some House members aren't helpful. So again, this isn't isolated to just Republicans or Democrats. We've seen this bipartisan coalition sort of forming here of people with just absolutely insane hawkish suggestions in terms of what we should be doing right now, and I'll remind you guys of a couple examples in a second. But we also had a response to this from none other than a Fox News host Ingram, who basically was pushing back on him as well. So everybody from Ilhan Omar all the way over to the most deranged Fox News host. So let's go ahead and hear what she had to say about this.
I know Lindsey Graham earlier tonight tweeted that basically someone needs to, quote, take him out, or maybe I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically someone should assassinate Putin. I don't know why a sitting U.S. senator would be tweeting that out. It seems really dangerous and stupid to say that, and we like Lindsey Graham, but that's just a stupid comment.
Okay, so again, when Laura Ingraham is telling you that you are being way too hawkish, when Laura Ingraham and fucking Tom Cotton, okay, Tom Cotton, when they are able to look at this situation and what you've been floating out there and say, hey, that seems kind of escalatory and dangerous to be saying right now, when they're able to recognize that, that's when you know that you've completely fucked up and gone overboard. Now, again, he's not the only guy that's been floating out some wild suggestions recently. I covered these in a story just a couple days ago, but just to remind you guys that this is, in fact, a bipartisan consensus here. So Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, floats kicking Russians out of U.S. universities in retaliation for Putin invading invading Ukraine. So again, you have a bunch of people who are like completely jumping the gun and overreacting, and this is just driving like Russophobia in the United States right now, where we're seeing people boycott Russian businesses and try to kick Russian university students out of school. I mean, just completely ridiculous. These people, innocent Russian civilians, not only do they overwhelmingly oppose Putin's actions, but they didn't have anything to do with this. They didn't decide to do this. Not even the oligarchs surrounding Putin are necessarily in favor of his actions right now in Ukraine. So why the fuck would you decide to take this out on innocent civilians? It will absolutely have the opposite intended effect of what he's trying to do now. I mean, if the goal is to rally the Russian people against Vladimir Putin, do you think that the West imposing ridiculous sanctions on them, treating them like shit here in the United States and around Europe, do you think that that's going to help that cause? No, of course it won't. So, completely wild and bigoted suggestions here coming from Eric Swalwell. We also have just casual suggestions to pop off World War III. This was just one example. Adam Kinzinger, who is often held up by liberals because he's nominally anti-Trump, I guess, but nonetheless suggesting essentially that we impose a no-fly zone over the country of Ukraine. And just a reminder, imposing a no-fly zone is not like some secret magic barrier that just prevents Russian planes from entering the airspace. It's a promise. It's a guarantee that we, Americans or NATO allies, are going to shoot down Russian planes, which means World War III. So again, completely insane suggestions. We also had that story that I covered yesterday of Sean Hannity, one of the most popular pundits in the entire country right now, basically just casually floating the idea of NATO secretly, I guess, bombing Russian convoys and then trying to pretend like it wasn't us in order to avoid World War III, I guess. So again, everybody just needs to calm the fuck down right now and stop floating this insane shit out there right now. I get that everybody, for very justified reasons, you want to punish Putin, right? You want to see him potentially removed from power in some way, but now is not the time to be floating out assassination attempts, okay? This is the closest that we have been to the prospects of actually falling into a World War III type of conflict in decades, okay? So now is not the time for that. Now is the time for aggressive diplomacy and trying to push for an end or a ceasefire or potential resolution to this conflict, however difficult that might seem right now. You have to go and exhaust those efforts, okay? You have to do everything physically within your power to avoid the continuation of this war, and beyond that, more importantly, to avoid the escalation of this conflict. Because however bad it is for innocent Ukrainian civilians right now on the ground, which it's absolutely terrible right now, and of course you feel for them and have sympathy for them and want to support them, but a nuclear confrontation between Russia and the United States, who collectively have enough nuclear weapons to blow up, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter collectively, that is not going to be better for the Ukrainian people. That is going to be significantly worse for not only the Ukrainian people, but also for the Russian people, and also for Americans and Europeans and the entire fucking planet, okay? So again, we're trying to avoid a nuclear confrontation. We're trying to avoid the escalation of this war, so everybody just needs to chill the fuck out.